Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Clarkspective.
Okay, first of all, I know the history behind the WNBA. I know that both of those cities have had teams before and they got us where we're at, so I'm thankful for that.
After Sophie Cunningham made a shocking revelation that is rocking the WNBA to its core, the league is in full damage control mode. Her startling remark has caused indignation, contentious discussions, and now a hefty fine intended to put an end to the controversy. Did the league view this as going too far, or was it a daring stand for the truth? Players are muttering, fans are divided, and the tension is quickly building. There's no denying that this is no longer just about basketball. This is the thrilling tale of the fine that everyone is talking about. The WNBA is rocked by Sophie Cunningham's struggle. Sophie Cunningham is at the center of a developing issue this season that is unlike anything the WNBA has ever witnessed. She has been given 4 different findings. An uncommon and severe reaction from the league to a player who is still gaining popularity. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 85% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great. Thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the video. It all began when Sophie posted a direct TikTok video denouncing the officials as worthless after a game full of dubious referee calls. A $500 fine was imposed right away for that one act. A penalty that surprised both players and many fans. Sophie, however, refused to give up. Rather than only defending her previous remarks, she vented her annoyance on a podcast. She elaborated on them, exposing a profound and pervasive discontent that many players had with the league's refereeing. This daring action resulted in a $1,500 fine, which was much more severe. The WNBA has sent a clear message by imposing a whopping $2,000 in penalties on her. However, Sophie was not deterred by this message. The whole basketball community has taken notice of the uproar it sparked. There was an immediate and intense outcry. As hashtags endorsing Sophie started to trend globally, social media networks exploded. Fans expressed their indignation by drawing attention to the league's blatant inconsistencies. Cunningham was penalized several times for being honest, but Caitlin Clark, another standout player who has dominated games and attracted a lot of attention over the past 2 seasons, has not been fined. The public's ire and perplexity were only heightened by this disparity. GoFundMe pages appeared almost instantly, and in a matter of hours, enough money was raised to pay Sophie's fines. In record time, thousands of people signed petitions calling for fairness in the imposition of fines and transparency in officiating. There was a clear and loud call for change. Why penalize a player for raising awareness of an issue that so many people think exists? Why disregard the demands for improved accountability and refereeing? There is more to Sophie's story than just penalties and annoyances. It tells the story of a league at a turning point. The demand for honesty, the issue of fairness, and the conflict between players and officials are all simmering to the surface. The WNBA is facing a battle that might change its destiny as support grows and voices become stronger. Sophie Cunningham's audacious position has only just started to have repercussions. What then occurs when bravery and control collide? Will Sophie's battle bring about change or have unexpected repercussions? Everything will be revealed in the upcoming chapter. Continue to observe. Sophie Cunningham and the dispute over free expression in the WNBA. The WNBA's response to criticism differs greatly from those of other major basketball leagues. Legends like Charles Barkley and outspoken NBA players like Draymond Green have built entire careers on their brazen honesty in addition to their skill. In particular, Barkley rose to fame as a cultural figure by candidly criticizing the game and its shortcomings. This type of candor is anticipated and celebrated by fans. It is a component of the identity of sports. However, Sophie Cunningham's narrative is rather different. The reaction was unsettling as she publicly criticized officials for failing to safeguard athletes, notably Caitlin Clark. She was only expressing her frustration at one point. The second time, she was hauled aside in front of everyone by a league official who gave her a warning that went beyond a simple reprimand: "They're going to find you again." It sent a strong message that free expression is not tolerated in the WNBA and that there are severe repercussions. The WNBA appears to adhere to a stricter rulebook where speaking up bears severe repercussions, in contrast to the NBA's culture of open communication. It is impossible to overlook this disparity, which raises important concerns about the culture the league hopes to foster. However, the WNBA has done something far different from what was intended in its attempt to quiet Sophie Cunningham. Her voice has only been amplified by their penalty, drawing even more attention to the officiating problems she brought to light. Attempting to bury a story only to make it major news is an example of the classic Streisand effect in action. When one considers the current issues surrounding unpunished cheap shots on Caitlin Clark, the irony becomes even more apparent. A concerning trend has been seen by fans. It seems like the NBA is more inclined to punish players for their remarks than for dubious or risky on-court behavior. What message about justice and priorities does that convey? When accountability looks elusive and the penalty system appears unfair, how can trust develop? Sophie was direct and candid in her critique. "I would acknowledge that I frequently make mistakes if I were a referee. It's not an easy job. What are you doing, though, when a straightforward call in front of you is repeatedly missed? What are you doing?" That is a question that affects more than simply a single person or game. It calls into question the overall integrity of the league's officiating. There is more to the issue than just one player or one fine. The WNBA's severe problems in this area are only highlighted when the NFL's officiating appears to be far superior. How long can a league survive when the voices calling for transparency and fairness are met with fines instead of solutions? Is a question that fans, players, and analysts alike are left wondering. Sophie Cunningham's fight is about more than just fines and annoyance. The league's very existence is at stake, and the result is still up in the air. What, then, is going on behind the silence and fines? Can Sophie's battle reveal anything the WNBA is frantically trying to conceal? Remain glued. What comes next has the potential to either destroy or drastically alter everything. The officiating problem in the WNBA and Sophie Cunningham. Have you ever felt uneasy after a WNBA game because you thought the competition wasn't quite fair? Sophie Cunningham has called attention to this persistent frustration. Although she freely admits that officiating is a difficult job, the inconsistent officiating in the league is what really worries her. This isn't about a few occasional missed calls. It has to do with a trend that is getting harder to ignore. This tendency is evident in how players express their displeasure after games, how teams modify their play, and how supporters respond with growing rage. Sophie's audacious comments weren't made out of thin air. The WNBA has been trying to covertly sidestep this terrible wound for years, but they have torn it open. The recent events concerning Caitlin Clark serve as an excellent example of the issue. During games, star players are routinely the target of cheap shots without a single whistleblower. Once uncommon, these incidents are now all too frequent, infuriating both players and fans. Social media and the stands are inundated with questions. Why are these infractions not penalized? Why does it seem like the league ignores this? The same confusion is echoed by the voices of veterans, rookies, and fans from all around the nation. What's happening with the referees? Many people inquire. However, the league's reaction has been to penalize players who are vocal, like Sophie. Some people may consider a $500 fee for voicing frustration to be a minor punishment, but it just fuels the flames. These consequences have turned Sophie's story into a rallying cry rather than reducing tensions. Her podcast conversation about the sanctions brought the WNBA's officiating problems back into the public eye, intensifying the dispute. Although refereeing issues are a problem in other professional leagues as well, the distinction is striking. It appears that the WNBA is more ready to punish words than deeds. While risky or unfair plays frequently go unpunished, players who speak up risk heavy fines. The gap between the league and its supporters widens as a result of this mismatch. Instead of encouraging trust and support, it is alienating them and fueling animosity toward an increasingly unjust system. How long can the WNBA continue to ignore the voices advocating for justice and transparency before the fissures beneath the surface start to show? More than merely officiating shortcomings have been revealed by Sophie Cunningham's bravery. A battle for the league's integrity and future has been triggered by it. But what if Sophie's silence was only the start? Before everything falls apart, how far will the league go to preserve its shaky reputation? To find out the truth, stay in touch. When analyzing how major sports leagues handle referee disputes, the WNBA's quiet backfires. There is a noticeable difference. Consider the NFL. The league retains a stronger sense of accountability in spite of high-profile errors like the notorious 2019 no-call in the Saints game. Fans, players, and the media all openly examine and discuss the judgments made by the referees, who are regarded as experts. Players are free to express their dissatisfaction with officiating without worrying about repercussions. Even when errors occur, this transparency fosters trust. The WNBA, on the other hand, appears to be going in a completely opposite direction. One that prioritizes silencing critics above addressing the actual issues. The league's choice to pay Sophie Cunningham $500 and subsequently an additional $1.05 has caused indignation and prompted harsh criticism. Supporters flooded social media with petitions calling for improved officiating and transparency, demonstrating unequivocally that silencing one player only serves to stoke the flames of anger. This is more than a fleeting backlash. It's a strong declaration that the public will no longer tolerate unresolved issues or covert choices. Poor officiating causes far more harm than just altering game results, according to research. It undermines confidence. Fans begin to question the league's legitimacy and fairness. Because they are afraid of fines and penalties that discourage open communication, players become reluctant to speak up. This cycle of mistrust and silence has the potential to completely alienate fans, undermining future growth and the sports support network. The story of Sophie Cunningham demonstrates this issue. Although she might have made a lot of money by taking advantage of her strong opinions, she was never attempting to manufacture drama for her own benefit. She would have received hundreds, if not thousands, of views and sponsorships from videos of her talking about referees. Rather, she opted to criticize the referees directly, even labeling them as worthless at one point. Although that candor had negative repercussions, it also served as a rallying cry. The fact that players and supporters aren't giving up is really amazing. Social media noise is more than just meaningless banter. It calls for honesty and transparency. The uproar wasn't sparked by Sophie's remarks. They only brought to light an issue that the league has been dealing with for many years. The WNBA's response has demonstrated that repressing criticism only serves to highlight the problem and heighten demands for accountability. The league is at a turning point as this movement expands. It may decide whether to face the officiating issues head-on or run the risk of upsetting the very community that supports it. Never before have the stakes been so high. The WNBA must now make a critical decision. Will it address long-standing problems or silence its detractors? What unseen factors are causing this pressing crisis? Everything will be redefined by what occurs next. The WNBA struggle with credibility and criticism. It seems like something from a bizarre bureaucratic nightmare that the WNBA would fire a player only for talking about her own penalty. It's confusing, even Kafkaesque, not because it exposes some profound irony, but rather because it shows how disconnected the league appears to be from its own problems. On her podcast, Sophie Cunningham told the complete tale of how her general manager called her aside in front of the team to inform her of yet another fine. Sophie's remarks were insufficient to get over the league's stringent punishment system, even though she acknowledged that certain referees are excellent and that their work is extremely difficult. The issue is more complex. Players like Sophie wouldn't feel the need to publicly vent their grievances if referees were regularly making the correct rulings and upholding order on the court. This indicates a significant collapse in officiating standards. The league turned a little grievance into a much larger problem by ignoring the concerns and stepping up punishment rather than taking the complaints seriously and trying to improve. What started out as a single player's grievance has grown into a significant debate about free expression and the boundaries of league power. Furthermore, the timing couldn't be worse. The WNBA is currently under scrutiny for fostering a hostile environment where candid criticism is treated with fines and intimidation, just as the Wall Street Journal published an opinion piece expressing worries about Caitlin Clark's civil rights possibly being infringed. The league's ability to create an environment where players feel comfortable speaking up is being questioned by media outlets. It's startling how differently the league responds to certain circumstances. Players like Caitlin Clark have been the focus of deadly hits for more than 2 years. DJ Carrington almost hurt Clark's eye, and Marina Mabra delivered a vicious blindside. However, there haven't been many serious repercussions from these instances. Meanwhile, the WNBA suddenly becomes intensely focused on enforcing discipline after Sophie Cunningham highlights the shortcomings of the referees. It's similar to witnessing someone fuss over someone forgetting to use a coaster while ignoring a raging fire in their home. It verges on tragic comedy since the priorities are so out of alignment. If only the league's reputation weren't so badly harmed. The response from fans has been predictable. They are clearly and vehemently outraged. They observe the gap between the league's stated values and its actual practices. The way the WNBA is managing the situation raises unsettling concerns about the league's actual goals and runs the risk of alienating the very individuals who enjoy the game the most, both players and fans. How, therefore, did a league that was supposed to inspire mute its own stars? What startling reality is hiding behind the curtain, just waiting to be revealed? This is the section you won't want to miss. In the midst of chaotic officiating, the WNBA struggles to silence voices. Fans and players are doubting the WNBA's actual values due to the sharp disparity in how it handles player safety and free expression. While Sophie Cunningham was fined for merely talking about referees on her podcast, other players, especially Caitlin Clark, who has been hit hard and even dangerously over the course of 2 seasons without receiving a single fine, have been subjected to cruel physical abuse. This obvious discrepancy went directly to the heart of the league's misguided priorities. As soon as Sophie's fines were made public, the outpouring of rage broke out. Supporters of a petition calling for significant changes to WNBA officiating started signing it quickly, adding their names every few minutes. This was not a premeditated campaign. Fans who had been quietly boiling with dissatisfaction for far too long reacted spontaneously. It was an obvious message. The way the league manages player criticism and officiating is gravely flawed. Some claim that players who criticize officials are punished by all professional leagues, which is somewhat accurate. What distinguishes the WNBA, too, is the ongoing necessity for such criticism in the first place. Despite sporadic errors, some leagues maintain a standard of officiating that hardly ever requires players to speak up all the time. Even if the NFL is frequently criticized for questionable calls, its referees still have far better judgment and eyesight than those in the WNBA. When another league's refereeing is viewed as perfect in contrast, it emphasizes how serious the issue is and implies that addressing the underlying reason should take precedence over punishing those who raise it. The gentleness of Sophie's remarks is even more perplexing. She was courteous and measured in her critique. No foul language, no insults, simply a straightforward reality that innumerable viewers have echoed. The referees are not performing their duties effectively. However, the league's response was fines and an apparent attempt to stifle dissent rather than an attempt to listen and get better. The WNBA's priorities are clearly indicated by this response. It exposes a league that is more concerned with managing the narrative than resolving the problems with the game. The WNBA appears to be caught in a loop of defensive damage control, which eventually damages the league's brand and alienates the very community it depends on, rather than accepting criticism as a chance for improvement. Now, the question is how long this pattern can persist before irrevocable harm is done. And just when it appeared like the WNBA may take a different turn, a startling choice might spark an even more serious problem. What does this signify for the future of the league? Watch this space for the next developments. The WNBA's growing dilemma is like a fire ignited by the suppression of facts. The decision to prosecute Sophie Cunningham for publicly criticizing referees backfired, since her remarks received significantly more attention than they otherwise would have. Fans flocked to listen to the episodes of her podcast that set off the fines because they wanted to know what caused the league to respond so strongly. This is a blatant illustration of the Streisand effect, which holds that efforts to stifle information only serve to increase its dissemination. The WNBA readily fell into this trap. The league needs more people who are as honest as Sophie. However, the WNBA penalized her rather than embracing her candor as an opportunity to grow. Opportunities to address issues arise when players are allowed to discuss them. However, penalizing honesty merely serves to conceal problems until they become too significant to ignore. The WNBA has long struggled with credibility and trust, and this violent reaction to legitimate criticism only serves to further the divide between the league and its fans. The timing exacerbated the situation. The idea of federal investigations into the league for possible civil rights abuses against Caitlin Clark was brought up in a Wall Street Journal piece around the same time. This resulted in widespread media coverage, including a Fox News program that questioned if the WNBA encourages a toxic work environment. Finding players to discuss officiating seems not just tone-deaf, but also totally unconnected in light of such grave problems. Rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship while ignoring the actual crisis is analogous to that. Sophie's story also highlights the broader issues with player relations in the WNBA. Officials appear to treat players like workers to be managed rather than collaborating with athletes to improve the league. Authentic voices that may forge closer ties with fans are silenced by this antiquated method. Because vocal stars like Charles Barkley are encouraged to defy expectations, leagues like the NBA prosper. The WNBA's seen but not heard approach runs the risk of making the sport uninteresting and unmemorable. The league is energized by Sophie's podcast, which also provides fans with real insight into players' perspectives. Even though her criticisms are polite, the WNBA penalizes her each time she expresses concerns. She acknowledged the difficulty of officiating and gave certain refs kudos. However, that was insufficient to escape penalty. It's an obvious message. No criticism is permitted, regardless of how just. The league's efforts have been met with tremendous opposition from fans, who refuse to accept these sanctions. Numerous people have signed petitions calling for significant officiating reform and volunteered to pay Sophie's fines. This goes beyond the usual grievances on social media. It demonstrates intense dissatisfaction with the leadership's inability to address fundamental problems. This circumstance explains why the WNBA has trouble gaining respect from the general public. Growth is only hampered when player speech control is prioritized over game improvement. Players won't publicly complain about a good product. However, no sanctions will prevent the truth from spreading if the officiating is subpar. Sophie Cunningham's penalties expose a leadership dilemma that puts appearances ahead of practical fixes. There will be more disputes until that changes. What do you think, then? Will player silencing merely lead to further controversy, or can the WNBA resolve its leadership issue and improve officiating? Please share your opinions in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe as well.